Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm just going to start off with some quick introductions. So yes, my name is Dan. I've been with Sauce Labs for close to just coming up on 4 years now, based out of Vancouver, Canada. And so the first 2 years I've been at Sauce Labs, I worked on the Appium project, which some of you may have heard of. Appium is a testing framework for UI testing of native mobile applications, native mobile and desktop applications, actually. So Android, iOS, Mac OS, Windows, and most of you have probably heard of Selenium already. Appium is the mobile equivalent of Selenium. I'm guessing most of you have heard of Selenium, but if you haven't, actually, we're going to be touching on that in today's conversation. So yeah, I'm really excited to be doing this workshop with you all. This is a subject that I am quite enthusiastic about and quite excited to be sharing this with you all. The user interface testing landscape has changed, I would say, pretty dramatically in the last, I would say, like 4 or 5 years. It used to really be there was only one player in town, which was Selenium. And now there's a lot of exciting new testing options, and yeah, I'll be sharing some of those with you today, and hopefully, I can help you on your testing journey. So, yeah, my objective today is to give you all a broad understanding of what the current web UI testing landscape looks like, and on top of that, I want to show you how you can incorporate Sauce Labs and our new Sauce Test Runner Toolkit functionalities into your testing journey. So, as I'm sure most of you already know, testing is a critical piece to having a successful continuous integration and continuous delivery. And it helps giving you a digital confidence. Okay. So first off, prerequisites. So we gave prerequisites in the description, but there were a couple pieces missing, but that's fine. We can take care of those things now. So actually, first thing we have is a repository. So github.com, I did it in my personal repo, in my personal GitHub, github.com/dpgram/testrunner-toolkit Cascadia. So here it is here. I'll just share that in the Slack channel. And I'll throw it in here as well, into the Zoom chat. So yeah, if you could all check that out, please. And I have it. So I'm using VS Code right now for my editor. Obviously, you can use whatever editor you like. So I'm using VS Code. So this is where I'm going to be doing most of the live coding examples and the tutorials from. But yeah, you're welcome to use whichever text editor or IDE you wish. And then prerequisites, so you'll need a GitHub account. So you'll need that in order to fork the repository. And also GitHub, you need GitHub so that we can make use of GitHub Actions. So GitHub Actions, for those of you who aren't aware, is GitHub's fairly new built-in continuous integration service. You'll need a Sauce Labs account. So if you don't have that already, if you don't have one already, you can actually go to the website now, and we give free trials. Docker we'll need for the Test Runner Toolkit portion. That one, if you have it, that's great. If you have Docker, then we can use that to test locally. But if not, it's actually not the end of the world, because what I'm going to do is show you how to incorporate like Test Runner Toolkit into a continuous integration service. So if you don't have Docker, you just can't run it locally. So not a big deal. And then final prerequisite, of course, you'll need Node.js and NPM, which being a CAST JavaScript conference, I'm sure most of you have that already. So the agenda. So what's on the agenda today? So first off, I'm going to give a brief overview of some of the existing web UI testing frameworks. So we're going to touch on Selenium, TestCafe, Puppeteer, Playwright, and Cypress. And then we're going to do more of a deep dive into Cypress. So we'll do a live tutorial of Cypress that you can all follow along with. And then I'm going to give you some time to do an exercise. After that, I'm going to showcase Test Runner Toolkit and Sauce Control. So these are the Sauce's open source tools that you can incorporate into your test project or into your Cypress project and to enhance the testing experience. And then I'm going to do a quick tutorial on continuous integration. So I'm going to show you how you can take these pieces and make this part of your continuous integration. So my goal for today is that you all come out of this with an introduction to the latest and greatest web UI testing frameworks, and specifically, we're going to go more in depth into Cypress. All right, so first I'm going to talk about Selenium. I assume most of you have heard of Selenium. So Selenium was developed way back in 2004, long before the rest of the frameworks that I'm going to talk about existed. So it's kind of like the OG of testing. So Selenium is an automation framework, and that's used to model the way a user uses the website. So the way Selenium works architecturally is it's a client-server HTTP architecture. So you have the client here that sends HTTP commands to a Selenium server. So the Selenium server is like a driver. So there's different servers for different browsers. There's Chrome driver for Chrome, Firefox driver for Firefox, etc. You send commands telling it to do things like, open this web page, find this button, click on this button, check the title of the documents, things like that. And then the service runs separately from the browser, and the service basically runs the browser for you. So Selenium is really, it's more of like a full black box testing framework. And even calling it a testing framework actually isn't totally accurate. It really is more so a tool that remote controls browser. Testing just kind of happens to be one of the use cases and the most popular use cases of Selenium. So a notable aspect of Selenium is the fact that it's based on the W3C, as of, I think maybe 5 or 6 years ago, it's based on the W3C WebDriver specification. That's W3C as in the World Wide Web Consortium. So all of the major browsers implement this specification, kind of how I showed in the last slide. And because they all implement this specification, you know that you're going to get really good cross-browser compatibility. And because it's based on a W3C specification, you know that it's going to be well supported and that there's not going to be too many breaking changes to the specification. So you can think of it as kind of like any other W3C spec. Excuse me. So like CSS Grid or WebSocket or any spec, you know it's going to be reliable and well supported. Now, because I showed you how it was using a client-server architecture. So before I showed you this one that shows the client server. Now, the service can run, actually, this can all run within your machine. So you could have WebDriver and web running off a local host and then the web browsers running locally, and you can run Selenium tests on your local machine or in your continuous integration environment. The way it works in Sauce Labs is actually you write the tests, you can write the tests, and then instead of pointing it to localhost, you point it to our cloud service, which is like ondemand.saucelabs.com. So you talk to our service. We have W3C web drivers and web browsers built into our virtual machines. And we have a vast array virtual machines and browsers. So you get Chrome, Edge, Safari, Firefox, mobile, and you get different versions, and they work on, and you can run them on different operating systems. And because you can run, with Sauce Labs, you can run your tests across quite a few different virtual machines at the same time, so you get parallelism that helps you speed up your testing times quite dramatically. Okay, so with that, I am going to go over to my Visual Studio Code now and do our first live example. So you're all welcome to follow along if you wish. So let's look at Selenium. So Selenium has a lot of different bindings for writing tests. So the one I'm going to talk about is WebDriver.io, because this is a JS conference. WebDriver.io is a binding that's written in Node.js. It's developed by that guy right there. Well, developed by lots of people, but he's the main founder. It's my colleague, Christian. And yeah, so like when you write Selenium tests, there's quite a bit that goes into it. There's, you know, you have to have the Selenium services, you have to have the client libraries, the test frameworks. I'm going to show you WebDriver.io because WebDriver.io has some pretty handy command line interface features that actually kind of encapsulate all this for you. So without further ado, so we'll need to go to cd other tests and Selenium. So let's run npm install here. So I have wdio and Chrome driver as dependencies. And so let's use npx. I'm going to be using the npx feature of npm quite a bit in this. So npx wdio, and just push enter. And then it gives you this pretty nice interactive interface that helps you get set up and running. So first of all, I'm going to do it on my local machine first. Press enter, and then let's use Mocha. Sure. Should I install the framework adapter for you? Yes, please. Where are your test specs located? test/specs/.js. So yeah, I have a basic WebDriver.io script here. So let's push enter. Which reporter do you use? Just use dot, and shall I install it for you? Yes, please. And then do you want to add a service? I'm going to add the Selenium standalone service. And let's do verbose logging. Just hit enter. Okay, so I'm going to make two different config files. So I'm actually going to rename this one wdio.config.conf.local.js. Okay, so how's everyone doing with this setup? I'll just ask it in the Slack channel. All right, so now that we have the config file, what I can do is do npx wdio and then wdio.config.local.js. And it's actually running Firefox. That's the default one that's chosen. So yeah, it went through that pretty quickly, but let me just do that again. So there, it pops up the Firefox browser, opens up the saucelabs.com site, does a quick test on it, and then there you go. So you have your results there. Okay, so now I'm actually going to set up another config file and show you all how you can run this inside of Sauce Labs. So npx wdio again, So I said on my local machine before, this time I'm going to be doing in the cloud using Sauce Labs browser stack or testing bot. So Sauce Labs, of course. So environment variable for username, Sauce username and Sauce access key. So everyone make sure, if you haven't done that already, to add those variables to your environment. Same options as before. Add the service. Let's add the Sauce service to the test setup. Shall I install services for you? Yep. For both, yep. Okay. All right, I'm going to rename this one wdio.conf.sauce.js. So I'm going to run this configuration file now, config.sauce. Yeah, sorry, that's correct. Yeah, thanks, Adam. Yeah, you have to hit the space button to select the options. So actually, if you had trouble with this, I actually had these config files in it's called the confs folder, so you could use those. Okay, so actually, sorry. So let's run wdio.conf.sauce.js again. And so as you can see, this time, it's not popping a browser this time because it's not running on your local machine anymore. This time it's running on Sauce Labs. So let's go to saucelabs.com, sign in. So sign in with your user account. And then there you go. So started 1 minute ago, saucelabs.com homepage. And you have the same test, but this time you have it running inside of our cloud. And there you go. So there's a basic tutorial on how you can get up and running with Selenium. Definitely think there's lots of options. There's a Java client and there's PHP, Python, Ruby. I really like the WebDriver IO client because it really encapsulates all the complexity of Selenium. There's a lot of pieces you need Selenium to get Selenium up and running. WDIO does a very good job getting that up and running for you. Yes, this is being recorded, so we can watch later. Okay, so I also have directions in the README on how to run this, so you're welcome to try this out later on. But with that said, I'm going to be moving on to discussing the next testing framework. So now I'm going to touch on TestCafe. So TestCafe, unlike Selenium, it's more of a full feature testing framework that includes everything you need to write the tests in one package. So it includes all like it includes the libraries and all the test frameworks and all of that. So you don't need to put all the pieces together with that. It uses a similar client-server architecture. So it's a Node.js server that accepts commands and then opens up the browser, and then it doesn't use Selenium. It actually injects JavaScript into the browser and orchestrates commands that way. So this will be easier. Again, we'll show a quick example of this. Here, so I have another folder called TestCafe under other tests. So right now I'm in other tests / Selenium. Let's move to other tests / TestCafe. Oops. Okay, so same thing. Let's do npm install from this package, and it should install TestCafe for you. And the way, so now we have npx TestCafe here, which is just a command line interface. And so we run help to get help with that. And so the way you run TestCafe is npx TestCafe, and then you actually give it the name of the browser. So I am going to select Chrome, and then .tests/example.test.js. So here's a sample TestCafe test that was taken from their website. And hit enter. So now it's going to pop up Chrome and it's going to run the test for you. Now, so for those of you using Mac, it's probably actually going to ask you to change your accessibility settings. TestCafe does that because it wants to be able to record your screen so that it can actually record the tests. And so right now we don't support TestCafe. So right now Selenium is the only one we support in our cloud for virtual machines, but it does work with Test Runner Toolkit, but I won't be touching on that for TestCafe or Puppeteer or Playwright today. I'm just going to be focusing on that for Cypress, so there won't be any Sauce Labs component for this. So, okay, so with that, we'll be talking about Puppeteer and Playwright now. So I took I copied Puppeteer and Playwright I'm putting together because they're kind of the same thing. Like Playwright is just Puppeteer adapted to browsers other than just Chrome. So Playwright adds support for like Safari and Edge, and I think Firefox as well. So I took this quote directly from the Puppeteer GitHub, which is that most things that you can do manually in the browser can be done using Puppeteer. So Puppeteer isn't really designed to, similar to Selenium, it's not technically designed to be a testing framework. It's more so designed to be a browser orchestration tool. What it does is it automates the way that a person would use a browser. So testing is just, it's just one of the possible applications of Puppeteer and Playwright. And so Puppeteer, so I have a Puppeteer example that uses Chrome. So I'm going to be going back to this project. I'm going to be going to cd /Puppeteer. npm install once again. So I have a test here that's written using Jest. And as you can see with the test, essentially what it's doing is it's just simulating a browser being used by a person. So you're launching the browser, you're opening a page, opening this website, saucedemo.com, doing an assertion to check that the title is correct, and then closing the browser. So I'll show that here. So npx jest.tests/example.local.test.js. So Jest, for those of you who don't know, is a testing framework. It's yeah, really quite great framework. So I'm going to run that now. This one takes actually a little bit longer than the rest, so I don't know why that is. Oops, pull it over here. So yeah, pretty similar to TestCafe. That open and close pretty quickly. But basically, yeah, you just run the test, and what it does is it opens up a browser, And then does a couple things pretty similar to how TestCafe works. So I'd set headless to false so that you can actually see this, but actually one of the things with Jest is that by default, if you don't set the headless parameter, then it's going to be headless. So what that means is it runs Chromium in headless mode. So that means that there's no user interface. It just runs like in the background. So you see here, here's my desktop. It's running the tests and nothing's happening. The test is all happening under the hood. All right, so that's it for Puppeteer and Playwright. So basically for the other frameworks, Selenium, TestCafe, Puppeteer, Playwright, I wanted to just kind of do a brief introduction. So if you couldn't get through the demonstration with me, that's fine. I provided a README, the directions in it. So if you wanted to try it yourself, you're welcome to do that. And all right, with that, before I move on to Cypress, I think I will look at some of the questions here. So let me just pull that up. Okay, so a question is, a number of years ago, I had heard Selenium is good for blocking languages like PHP, but does not do well with callbacks, promises, async await in JavaScript. Is this still true? I don't know. I don't think I fully understand the point the person was making there. It's not to test. So you're not actually testing backend with Selenium, you're testing the front end. So it's more of a web page test. If you're talking about, I assume they're probably talking about the clients, because the way, with JavaScript, you have to make use of callbacks and promises in Node.js, which used to be really tedious, but actually with WebDriver IO, they have pretty good async, they support async await, so that's pretty good. And they even have like a no async await mode in WDIO that does away with all that. So. Comparing that versus Cypress, they do handle asynchronicity and conditional testing way differently. So yeah, we'll be talking about Cypress and some of the differences between Selenium and S. Which framework do you recommend for testing in mobile browsers / mobile devices? So mobile browsers, pretty much the only option you have at this point. I think TestCafe supports that, and but Appium is also one. You can test mobile apps in using Appium. Mobile devices, if you're talking about native apps, there's other options. So there's Appium, Espresso for Android, and there's XUI test for iOS. Okay, and I think these are so E2E tests are notoriously brittle. Does Selenium still suffer from a need to introduce wait/sleep commands? So yeah, that is kind of just part of the nature of Selenium, is that you have to wait for elements and you have to sleep on them for them to show up because it's outside of the browser. So yeah, that is a thing, although a lot of the client libraries handle that for you. And so I'm actually going to get back to my presentation though, but I'll be sure to get back to the Q&A. And as far as Q&A goes, we don't have to do it all within the scope of the presentation. The workshop today, I'll be around afterwards, and I'll keep the Slack channel open for a long time and make sure that no questions go unanswered. All right, so with that, let's get back to the presentation. And so now we're going to be talking about Cypress. So Cypress is probably the hottest new web automation framework right now, and it works quite a bit differently from Selenium in that So Selenium runs from outside of the browser and orchestrates operations from the browser. And Cypress actually runs from inside of the browser and runs the web application from inside an iframe. So there's no client server architecture. And because of the way they do things, tests run quite a bit faster, like a lot faster. We'll be able to demonstrate that. And they're not nearly as flaky either. And like was it Marcelino was saying, that you don't deal with the problem of having to wait for elements and having to inject sleeps and all that. And then because Cypress runs within the same runtime as your application under test, it has access to the DOM and network calls, which can be mocked. So it has like a lot more access. And Cypress, similar to TestCafe, it's an all-in-one testing framework. So it has everything all in one place. So you don't need to deal with like trying to get to wrangle together a whole bunch of different frameworks. Some of the drawbacks to Cypress are that currently it has limited cross-browser support. They have Chrome and Firefox. They might be adding more. I don't know. They don't have Safari. I don't know if they'll ever have Safari. You can't do multi-browser or even multi-tab, and that's a drawback that'll never be fixed. So that's just not a use case for Cypress if you're testing multiple browsers concurrently. And then one other thing, because of the iframe architecture, you can't actually visit multiple origins in the same test. Sorry, multiple domains. So if you have a test that goes from one web domain to another web domain, it's not going to work. Okay, so with that, we're going to start out with a Cypress tutorial. So let's go back to my page, to the repository. I'm just going to reset everything. I don't need those. Okay, so let's run npm install. So that was pretty quick for me. It might take a while for you all. So if everyone could just run that and then let me know, maybe in the Slack channel. I'm going to ask if it's finished, and then you could just respond with like a thumbs up. And the reason it actually takes quite a while is because you probably noticed that it's installing a binary. So once it installs here, we have npx Cypress here. So that gives you a list of the CLI commands. And then you have a thing called the cache, which is the binary cache. So npx cache. You can show the path. You don't need to. Oh, sorry, npx Cypress cache. So I'm just going to open this in a Finder. Again, this isn't an important thing to follow along with. I just think it's useful to kind of see what's going on with Cypress here. So these are all the different versions of Cypress. And then in the case of Mac, it has all of these .apps, which are basically just applications. They're like Chromium, like Electron applications that your tests run from inside of. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to continue then. Is anyone else still waiting for npm install? I'll just give it a minute or so. Okay, well, if not, then I'm going to start with this. So let's start with npx Cypress open. Okay, so what did that just do? So you have a look here, and all of a sudden there's 24 new files being added to my GitHub repository. It's so it created a folder for you called Cypress. So fixtures, integrations, plugin, and support. Integration is where you're going to be spending most of your time. So what Cypress actually does right out of the box is it gives you a vast array of different specs that all give you examples that demonstrate kind of how Cypress works. So basically just sample specs to get you up and running. So I'm going to go back to the Cypress application though, and have a look at this here. So you have a list of these same specs here from within the application, and I'm just going to pick a random one. Let's say miscellaneous.spec.js. So all you need to do is click on that, and it's going to be running your tests from this user interface here. So you can see here on the left, it gives you kind of a control panel and shows you the commands that are being run. And here is actually your test, your app under test. As I had kind of mentioned before, it's being run from within an iframe. So you can actually see it if you inspect the dev tools here. Where is it? Okay, yeah. So yeah, your app under test is being run in an iframe. So that's actually because of the same origin policy of iframes. That's why you can't actually go between domains, because you can't access a iframe if it's on a different domain as the main site. All right, so that's how this is how you use the user interface here. Then you could just run tests manually. So here they are running in the background. So, but what I'm going to do now is you're obviously going to want to be able to run it from a continuous integration environment. So if you do npx Cypress run, what that is going to do is it's going to run the Cypress tests for you, and it's going to run them all just from the command line. Okay. That's interesting. Some of the tests are failing for me. Of course, they would fail for the first time. I am doing a live workshop, but whatever. It doesn't matter. It's not a big deal. Okay, so for this workshop now, what I would like to do is move on to an actual exercise portion of this. So I have this folder here or file here called exercise.md. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you all 3 options for what to do for the exercise. Wow, they all failed. All right. So for the exercise, I'm just going to get you all up and writing some Cypress tests. And I'll give you basically three options. So we have a demo site called saucedemo.com. Saucedemo.com is it's a test site that we use to do demonstrations for Sauce Labs. So I'm not making you write tests for Sauce Labs. It's just for practice purposes. So this is the site here. And for this activity, we'll make use of Cypress's behavior-driven development assertions. You can find that here. So just Cypress BDD assertions. And so I'll have you write these test cases. So test case number one, as a user, I should be able to log into saucedemo.com and then log out. So really basic test case. So I'll just demonstrate how it actually works live. So this is just a fake login. So just standard user you put in, and then you put in the password secret_sauce. And then log out. And then I have 3 more test cases on top of it. So as a user, I should be able to add an item to a shopping cart and check it out. As a user, I should be able to add multiple items and then get rid of the items. And then as a user, I should be able to sort the items in reverse alphabetical order. So you can just do as many of those as you'd like for the demonstration, for the tutorial portion. But that's just option A. Option B is, if you don't want to test saucedemos.com, maybe you have another web application that you wish to test for, you're more than welcome to start writing your own test cases and make your own tests for your own web application. And by the end of the workshop, you'll actually have it set up with CI with GitHub Actions. So you don't have to feel beholden to writing tests for saucedemo.com. You can just write them for your own website and just kind of do whatever you want. And then option C is you can just take a break and not do anything. I won't judge you on that. Once we're done with the exercise portion, I'll be showing everyone how to hook this in with your continuous integration. And you'll just be able, it's fine if you just want to use the default integration tests. All right, everyone, so that's it for the workshop portion of our discussion. Well, sorry for that, the Cypress test writing portion. So now I'm going to resume the presentation. So I'm just going to show you something. So I'd shown you in the beginning that Cypress created these 4 folders. Now you can see that there's actually 2 extra folders. There's screenshots and there's videos. So Cypress actually, when you record a spec, it actually records an MP4 video of your test. So now you think, okay, so we're running all these tests. Locally, and we're creating all these videos locally, which is good. But now we have the question of, okay, how can we take the assets that our tests produce, and how can we retain those assets and use them to maybe get more insights into what our tests can do into our tests. So that's where I'm going to be talking about Sauce Labs Test Runner Toolkit. So Sauce Labs Test Runner Toolkit is a containerized testing solution that simplifies user setup, speeds up test execution time, and supports open source frameworks for running end-to-end web tests. So right now we have support for Cypress, Puppeteer, Playwright, and TestCafe. And from the command line, you can configure tests to run in these frameworks. And yeah, so the idea is that we provide you a pre-configured container that contains all the dependencies that you need to get the test up and running. And then what we do is it takes the assets, uploads it to the cloud, and allows you to get insights into what the state of your applications. So yeah, Test Runner Toolkit includes the dependencies. Like I said, it has the browsers, it has containers that have the browsers, the automation tools, and the testing frameworks that you need for the testing. So yeah, like I said, it's currently in beta, but it's simplified testing with a pre-configured container, run tests locally to speed test execution, and then report test data to Sauce for debugging analysis and insights. So you can kind of get an idea in this chart here, this diagram here. So here's the container where the automation happens, and then it gets passed to either CI/CD or local, and then it gets passed to Sauce Labs, where so we take your test information, the screenshots, videos, log files, metadata. We retain your assets for later viewing, for later debugging, and we provide insights on top of that. So the best way to demonstrate, so it's better instead of just talking about Test Runner Toolkit, what I can do is actually show it to you in action. So if everyone can follow along with me right now. So we're going to install another dependency called npm install sauce control, sauce ctl. Coding. Okay, and then once you have that ready, you should be able to run npx sauce control, a lot of npx CLI commands for this workshop. And you should see something like this. So this requires Docker to be installed on your machine. If you don't have it installed, that's okay, so you won't be able to run it locally, but we will be doing integrations with continuous integration and GitHub Actions, and you will be able to run it from the cloud. So npx sauce control. So what we're going to do is npx sauce control new, and we're going to have yet another interactive prompt. So npx sauce control new. Going to pick Cypress. Choose the Sauce Labs region. Let's go with US West 1. It doesn't really matter. I think most of us are in US West 1. All right, so we bootstrapped it successfully. So we have this config file here. So this is a sauce config. It tells the test where to run. I'm actually going to change this one. So you'll need to change this one from Cypress integration example.test.js to **that.js. And I'll just share this in the Slack channel. And okay. So we have the sauce config file set up. And what we're going to do now is we're going to do sauce control run. So what it's doing is it's running the Cypress tests that are defined here in Cypress/integration. However, this time it's not actually running it from inside of your local machine. It's actually running it inside of a Docker container. So our Docker containers, we have Docker containers for Cypress Playwright, Puppeteer, and TestCafe. They're all open source and they're all available here in Docker Hub. So probably you noticed the first time you ran the test, it went quickly for me, but for you, it's probably going to be telling you that it's fetching this. So this is a Docker container that contains all of your Cypress and the dependencies required to run Cypress tests. And then it also has our test runner code, which after running the test, uploads your assets to Sauce Labs. Okay, so I'm still letting the test run. So I'm just going to ask in Slack, did everyone get sauce control running? I'm going to delete files.spec.js because that one always seems to have problems. I think it's because it's running inside a container. Right, because it's in use. Okay. Okay, so 18 out of 19, so tests are almost complete. Yeah, files.spec failed. That's expected. All right, well, there's some feedback I can give. Okay, so as you can see now, so the test ran inside of a container, and it's for all the different tests, it retains all the assets, and you can open those assets with the link provided here. So sign in once again with Sauce Labs. Right, so we have all these tests that started 1 minute ago from here to here. You should be able to see this once you log into Sauce. You should see all these tests that run. So now you see here we have these specs here, and then we have the saucelabs.com homepage. So they look similar, but they're actually different. So the difference here is that the saucelabs.com homepage test that we did with WebDriver IO, that actually ran inside of our virtual machines. So the way these worked is that they ran from inside of a Docker container, and then we uploaded the assets to Sauce Labs. And then Sauce Labs retains the assets, and then you can come back to it for later viewing. You can look at the logs. The logs are pretty sparse right now. So again, this is still in beta. And you can go back and watch the video of your past tests. All right, so with that said, so now we can, what I'd like to do, so we're all running, we've done everything from our local machine right now, but what I would like to do now is we would like to have this hooked into our continuous integration. And so for this coding example, or for this workshop, I chose GitHub Actions. It's a pretty obvious choice because it's built in, don't need to deal with tokens or anything. Of course, if you want to use another CI service, you're welcome to, but for this demonstration, we're going to use GitHub Actions. So if everyone can navigate to their homepage and go to Actions. And what I'm going to do here is going to have a new workflow. And so under this, look for the node.js workflow. It's under my recommendations, but if you don't see it, it should be under more continuous integrations. So click Setup Workflow. Okay, so we're going to make a Node.js workflow. I'm going to call this file cypress.js.yaml. And so the matrix we can take out. We don't need to test multiple node versions. So we're not testing a node application. We're running Cypress. So let's use node 14.x because it's the latest and greatest. npm CI, yep, that's correct. npm run build, no, we don't want that. What we want to do is we want npx cypress run, and then take this command out. And I'm going to just create a new branch. We'll call it gh actions and propose new file. Right. So I have the cypress.js.yaml pull request created, which has the file that is going to be running our Cypress tests. And now you see here a continuous integration job is going to kick in now. And let's just go over to checks here and open this tab up. And as you can see, things are up and running, and I'm just going to check this out locally myself. So I'm going to do git fetch, git checkout gh actions. And so now we can see the GitHub cypress.js.yaml file locally. And we're going to be doing some more work with this momentarily. Okay, it says we looked but could not find a cypress.json file. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, there's a little gotcha. So I think when I ran source control, it deleted cypress.json. So make sure you have this file, cypress.json in the root, and it just has an empty JSON file here. So git commit a, and so this is probably another thing I could add to the feedback for Cypress test runner toolkit. Git add, just commit and push all these. All right, so I did a push to the pull request. And now it's going to be kicking off the job again. And while I'm here, just a reminder to everyone, be sure to go to settings and secrets, and be sure to add your sauce access key and your sauce username to the secrets. This will be a critical piece in order to get this working with sauce test runner. All right, so we've got through that part now. Now it's running Cypress run. So it's running that in the background, and I fully expect that to pass. All right, I'm gonna share this block of code here with everyone in the Zoom chat and the Slack chat. All right, so there we go. So we have Cypress integrated with GitHub Actions now. So now we have our first passing Cypress test. So this is just a Cypress test that's running from inside of one of GitHub Actions VMs. But now I would like to wire this up with Test Runner Toolkit. So I shared a link to this page here. I'll just copy and paste the whole thing into the chat, but basically we want to add another job on top of the one that we have currently. So I'm just going to rename this job. We'll call this Cypress to indicate that we're running a Cypress test on the local machine, but I'm going to add a new job here. And I am going to call this one Cypress sauce. And we're going to have a look at this. And I'm going to change this one to, instead of .sauce, we'll call it .sauce/config.yaml. And so as you can see here, the difference between these two is this one runs on Ubuntu. This one runs on STT Cypress Mocha node. So that's what I was showing you earlier, the Docker Hub. So what this is doing, will do is it's going to tell GitHub to fetch the sauce test runner toolkit Docker container and then run our tests on that. So what I'll do is I will just copy this all, and I am going to add this just to the Slack chat. So if you missed any steps in that, this is what you could do with your cypress.js.yaml /cypress.js.yaml. Okay, so I'm going to commit and push this. So add Sauce Labs test runner toolkit. And push this. So pushing it to the pull request that I currently have open. Okay, and now you should see instead of just the one check, there's two checks now. Cypress and Cypress sauce. So Cypress, we already know this one works, so I'm going to look at Cypress sauce now and see what's going on. Okay, so it's going to initialize the containers, and it's going to run the code in the container, and it's going to be running things in the background. So if you've fallen behind with this, though, you're more than welcome to just check out the GH actions, this branch that I made. So you can pull this, and then you could run it from your own fork. There's no spec files that were found. Okay, so there's some issue there. So I'm just going to troubleshoot this locally because for some reason it's not seeing the files .saw/config.yaml. No spec files were found. All right, there you go. So sorry, there was a mistake in the configuration file. So it should be, this is how the sauce config YAML should work. Okay, so we have it running again, and all right, so we'll have that running in the background, and I'll come check up on it later. And I will proceed with talking about Test Runner Toolkit. So I've just shown you now how you can make use of Sauce Labs Test Runner Toolkit with Cypress to collect assets and to retain assets and get insights into your tests. And then I've shown you how we make use of Docker containers to give you just one consistent environment that has all of the dependencies available ready for test. And now I can talk about the roadmap. Right, so some of the plans we have for enhancements to Sauce Test Runner Toolkit is we're going to extend DIY grids with the Sauce Labs platform. So basically the idea behind that is so we provide Sauce Labs, we provide a grid of virtual machines for your browser and mobile testing needs, but we understand that many of our customers want to use their own do-it-yourself grids. So with Sauce Test Runner Toolkit, the plan is to support that. So you can use your own DIY grids, but then use Sauce Labs to upload assets and to give you some more kind of insights into how things work. We'd like to add more cross-platform support, a more rich authoring experience. So give users the ability to write tests outside of that maybe don't have any coding experience, and then machine learning is a big part of it. So we're looking at ways of doing intelligent test execution based on past performance. So let's say you have tests that are flaky in the past. The idea is that Sauce Labs will recognize that certain tests are flaky or they fail a lot, and will run those automatically. And then another feature is that we want to be able to run your Cypress, TestCafe, or Playwright or Puppeteer tests inside of our VMs. Right now, we have it running inside of a Docker container, either locally or through a continuous integration service. But we want to be able to actually run that from inside of our VMs so that you can take advantage of the vast cross-browser support and cross-platform support that we have in our Sauce Cloud. Okay, so let me just go back to GitHub Actions and let me see. Oh, interesting, okay. So I'm just gonna have it run this one file here, example.test.js. And just going to have it running. So I'll have it running in the background again. But yeah, essentially what's going to happen is the Cypress Sauce tests are going to run, the assets are going to be uploaded, and same as before, you'll be able to navigate to saucelabs.com, and you will be able to see the results of your tests. All right. Well, with that, we have 15 minutes left. So now I would like to open things up for Q&A. So I'll have a look at the Slack channel here and the Zoom chat and the Zoom Q&A. So the question is, how would Babel or TypeScript fit into this flow? So I know that TypeScript, like you can add a script that transpiles your TypeScript code to JavaScript, but Cypress actually has like TypeScript plugins that you can make use of. So this page here explains how you can make use of TypeScript into Cypress. It just takes a little bit of extra configuration. Okay, so the question is there any suggestion to handling large test suites in Cypress? It does not support parallel runs on its own. You mentioned it is in the works for Sauce Labs, but outside of it. Yeah, so yeah, you're correct. It's in the works for Sauce Labs. Actually, Cypress does have support for parallelism. It's actually quite clever. What they've done is they have a way here of what you can actually do is you can run tests like this. So you can run it from multiple different virtual machines, or sorry, just different machines at the same time. And then you give it all a key. And the way it works is this actually talks to, it's like a service, it's like a broker that will say like, okay, here's the list of specs I need to run. And then it actually queues them all up and then sends out the different specs to each different machine. So that if you're running on 3 different machines, you split it up across 3 and you get a big performance boost. And then the plan for this is that we want to support this in Sauce Labs so that you can run it on virtual machines and you can run it across a substantial number of machines. All right, well, if there's no more questions, I did have a little bit of bonus content that I would like to discuss. So it's just one extra little feature that I thought I would share with you. Maybe do like a little bit of a live coding session with Cypress. So Cypress has a thing called commands. What commands do is they let you simplify features that might be like overly repetitive. And so you don't have a big mess of like repetitive operations. So like one of the examples of that was doing a login. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to do a live coding of logging into Sauce demos. So let's just toss all this. So I understand it might be difficult to follow along with this, but it's something you'd be able to try on your own. So I'm going to do a Sauce demo login. So I'm going to do cy.visit www.saucedemo.com. So npx Cypress open. It's going to open the Sauce site. And now what I want to do is I want to do a login here. So let's inspect the contents of this so I can write my selector. So username, so cy.get username, and then dot type, that is standard user. And I need to get the password, so let's do that again. The ID is password. Type, and it is, password is secret sauce. Obviously, if you're writing tests like this, you probably want to hide this behind an environment variable. And then I need to click on the login button. ID is login button, cy.get this, and click. So I'm going to hit save, and Cypress is going to use its nice live coding feature, and it's going to log in. All right, so that's great. So, but as I showed you before, previously in the exercise.md, we had all these different test cases that all involve doing a login. And so it's going to get a little bit repetitive doing this over and over again. So wouldn't it be nice if there was a way to just have a general login function that can be reused across different tests? And Cypress does indeed support such a feature. So all this stuff. So if you see under support commands.js, you can do this. So Cypress even has this commented out as an example. So I'll make this a nice reusable function. So I'm going to do cypress.commands.add login username password. I'm going to use the function syntax, be old-fashioned. And so I'm going to take all this, going to copy it, add that here. Username, password. So now instead of cy.get, instead of this mess of selectors, I am going to do this. I'm going to say cy.login standard user, secret sauce. And there you go. So it does the same thing. So it does the same thing as it did before, but now we have this nice interface that hides the complexity here. And the great thing about this is because now we have it in one place, that if this ever changes, like if the CSS selectors are brittle and these changes, you just need to change it in one place and you don't need to go everywhere in the code where a login happens to change everything. So yeah, that's one nice little feature of Cypress that I thought I'd share with everyone. And yeah, with that, I will open things up back to question and answer, see if anyone has anything they want to share. Okay, so questions. On the mobile talk, is there any way to maintain a common code base for Appium and Selenium? Or do you consider the best way to have separate tests for desktop web versus mobile web? So no, I actually would recommend that you have them all in one place. You can make use of WebDriver.io. WebDriver.io has first-class support for Appium and Selenium, so you can write the tests together. And you can actually, if you're writing mobile web tests, you can reuse those same tests that you would use on the desktop web, and you can use them on mobile web if they're compatible with each other. So yeah, that's the answer to that. How do you get around? Allison's asking, how do you get around not copying, pasting, repeating lots of things for tests, i.e. needing to log in before majority of the tests? So that's actually a great question. So Cypress actually has a feature built into that. It's called Cypress Commands. So you could go to this page and it will show you how you can do that and write very reusable code. So yeah, that's a very good question. So examples of analytics Sauce Labs would provide for tests ran with Test Runner Toolkit. So I am probably not the best person to answer that right now. I'll get you in touch with some of our experts on that. I'll make a note of that. So I'll talk to Kunal. Question is, do you prefer longer E2E tests or smaller pieces? I think the answer to that is make it as small as it needs to be. I think it's good to have small E2E tests that cover basic cases, but I also think it's a good feature to have, kind of like, and we call them kitchen sink tests, like everything in the kitchen sink, where you run a whole bunch of different features on your website that just sort of smoke tests everything and make sure everything's working fine. Okay, so we're getting close to the 12:30 mark. I think that's it for me for now. I'll stay around in the Slack channel if anyone has any more questions, and see if any of my colleagues have anything they want to add or share.
Hey Dan, it's Susie. Thanks for all that great content. I think that's everything from our end as well, and really glad to have that Slack space open so we can keep the conversation going and answer questions and keep running some code together.
Awesome. And then Susie, I think, are we going to email them with the resources, like the test?
Yes. So for a quick wrap up for everybody, I know everyone's headed off to lunch break now, but you can expect an email from us later this week with the recording of this workshop. So you can go back and revisit any of those pieces that maybe went a little too fast to follow along with in real time. We will also send out additional links and information for you so you can dig in more on your own time following this. So stay tuned for more from us. Again, by the end of this week, we'll get that out to you. And I think with that, Dan, we'll wrap things up here. And thanks so much for your time and for sharing out all of this great information.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks, everyone.